Hey y'all, this is Gina. I'm coming to you this morning from the gate into our family's ranch here in Deep South Texas. This video hopefully will help some of our family that have questions about our family's farm, family ranch, whatever you want to call it. It'll help give y'all some information. So this is the entryway into the ranch. It's at the end of a county road. As you can see, the sun is just starting to rise. You can maybe hear the roosters crowing everywhere. You can probably tell that there is a lot of brush out there. We haven't had a tractor on this property, a working tractor on this property in probably over 20 years. So what used to be beautiful clear fields for livestock and for growing vegetable and other crops is now brushland. So I have driven over the cattle guard and I am now on the Caliche Road that leads into the property. You can see, or maybe you can tell, that the road in is about a quarter mile, maybe a little less than a quarter mile, to get from the front gate to where the homes are. On both sides of the road, when I was a child, my grandfather planted oak trees, some of which have survived. Unfortunately, we lost many to droughts over the years, but there are still several oak trees that are getting fairly large. These oak trees are probably about 30 years old at this point. They were watered in when they were young to get them established, but over the years they've just existed off of rainwater, so they're not as big as the trees that you would see in our yards. But this is the road in. Again, these used to be cleared fields that were used mostly for cattle or livestock. At this time, we do not have any cattle or livestock, and you will see, however, since there is brushland, a lot of wildlife. It is not unusual for us to drive out here and see deer. We occasionally see nilgai. We, of course, have rabbits. We have javelinas, turkeys, quail, dove. Luckily, we don't have a huge feral hog issue here on this property. We have more recently started having more issues with big cats, however. So we do have chickens and turkeys, and we've had some issues with bobcats, and we have seen cougars or mountain lions, whatever you want to call them. We have seen them on this property. So that's what happens with thick brush, is you get more wildlife. So I'll make a brief stop here on the road in. We have several gas pipelines that cross this property. You can maybe see the pole there that marks that there is a gas pipeline. Again, we don't have a tractor. This is kept clear cut by the pipeline companies. And this is one of the things that attracts wildlife to us. Of course, we have thick brush on both sides, but then also, since this grass is mowed about twice, maybe 3 times a year, there's something for them to forage on as well. On that note, these pipelines can be very dangerous. About 10 years ago, the pipeline exploded just over that ridge line right there. My parents were here at the property alone. They heard the explosion, they felt the explosion, and they had to evacuate across this road, worried that the explosion was going to spread up the pipeline, which that sometimes happens when pipes rupture, but that was their only way out of the property. And so they did evacuate very quickly and safely, and everything was resolved. But you know, these things can be hazardous. If you don't have one near you, count yourself lucky. But you know, that's South Texas. There's pipelines everywhere. After you make your way down the drive, you get to this next cattle guard, which we actually have covered in with dirt. That was done by my grandfather and I believe my dad and uncle when we were kids. There were just issues with snakes hiding under the cattle guard, and we were young children and they didn't want us to get bit. But when we had cattle, there was an existing cattle guard here, and there were fences that went around this interior part of the ranch or the farm. You would basically call it the homestead portion. It's probably about 4 or 5 acres, maybe 6, that would have been within the internal fence. This is where the precious water well is, and the large tank that used to be used for irrigation and watering cattle. That holds a lot of water. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of gallons, but it holds a lot of water. You can see that it's not in the best shape. But the well we've repaired the well many times. We've replaced the well pumps, both the above ground pressure pump and the in-ground pump. And so the well still works, and it is a really good well that produces really clean, good drinking water. But back there is where my parents' house is. This is what used to be my grandparents' house. Forgive the overgrown grass. Our lawn tractor is not working at this point in time. There are 2 houses on the property at this time. The first house that you will see as you come in is my parents' house. Yeah, not much to say about that, but this is where my parents live. And here's kind of a view around what would have been the internal part of the homestead. And that is what was my grandparents' house. I mentioned that our lawn tractor is broken at this point in time, which is why the grass is so deep over there. My brother borrowed my boyfriend's push mower that is for his mom's house in town, and he actually mowed all of this with a push mower last week, which, he monitored it on his watch and said he did about 10 miles that day going back and forth trying to get this cut by hand. This house here was my grandparents' house. This would have been Ann and JC's house, and they lived here until they both had to go into a nursing home later in life. At this point in time, this house is currently vacant. However, my brother, myself, and my boyfriend are currently working on cleaning out the house. It's been being used as storage. So we're working on cleaning out the house, upgrading some electrical, some plumbing, a few things like that. We're going to need to get the AC unit repaired, but we will be working on getting this house fixed up for my parents to move into. You can see that it does have a wheelchair accessible ramp on the home, and it is all one single flat level, which my parents' house is not. And my mother has some mobility issues and my father has some vision issues. So this house is going to be a little more safer and appropriate for them as they are aging. So we are working on getting this house nice and fixed up for them, and we hope to have them in here within a couple of months. If you are wondering where my great-grandmother's house used to be, that would have been Teresa or Terry's house. It was approximately in this area. That house was auctioned off after her passing, and it was sold and moved off the property. But it stood approximately in this area, and that was not the original homestead house. We believe the original homestead house, or at least according to my grandmother Ann, the original homestead house was, I'm facing north, and so it was somewhat to the northwest out in this area over here. It would have been off in that field. At least that's what we have been told. I believe that when I was a child, we were told that you could still find parts of the foundation. It wasn't a concrete foundation, obviously. It was more of like a pier and beam type house, a wood frame house, and you could still find part of the rubble from it out there. But that house has not existed for many, many, many years. It was not here when I was a child, which was 40 years ago, or 30 something years ago. And the house that was here, the oldest house that was here, was Teresa's house, and this is approximately where it was. So it was directly across from my grandmother's house and across from my parents' house as well. So it was kind of centrally located here in the middle. I think I may have just said northwest, and that would be incorrect. That would be the northeast direction that we are looking in. Not sure why I said that. There's a couple of my brother's turkeys. Again, doesn't normally look like this, but we have been without a lawnmower for a bit of time. Hopefully we get that up and running soon, and we can get everything trimmed up, and I can do another video that doesn't look as overgrown and you can see things a little better. But again, the house would have been to the northeast of what is the current homestead.